And we're in. We are live, episode 3 of 115 miles. Hass, how you doing, mate?
Yes, I'm good, mate. How are you?
I'm all right, mate. Do you know what I'm excited about today? I'm excited and I'm feeling good about today's podcast.
Yeah? Why so?
Do you know what, right? The reality is I think the last couple of weeks, up until about 3 or 4 days ago, I didn't realize that I was struggling's the wrong word, right? But I was in a little bit of I wasn't my 100% self, basically. And so this happens to me a lot. When I'm in it, when I'm in like a little bit of a tricky space with how I feel, I can't communicate it. I don't communicate it until afterwards. I don't know if you've noticed it in me, because you speak to me every day, but I go through these periods where I have these little, and I don't think it's necessarily to do with lockdown or the way the world is. I just go through these moments. One of the ways you can tell is because I go like overly evangelical. I get a little bit like abrasive and a bit like really wanting to push all my thoughts. It's a way of like, it's a deflection tactic, it's a coping mechanism. Rather than like allowing anybody to come into my space, I just start being righteous and picking out what's wrong everywhere else so that I never have to kind of look in.
You get a bit ranty, don't you? I've noticed it sometimes.
Yeah, I get really ranty because I start focusing on everyone else and what's wrong with other people as a way of not having to look at what I'm struggling with. Do you know what I mean?
Cool. So what shifted, do you think, this week?
I can never really tell what it is that shifts. It just, I don't know. I don't know what I can put I do think I often reach a point in the end where I'm in a bit too much pain and it's become too uncomfortable. And I think to myself, I've got to do something about this. And then I go in. That's when I start looking in and I think, what's going on? What's wrong with me? And I think I've done that maybe, what day are we on now? Tuesday. The back end of last week. I think my 4 kids come in really helped. So my 4 kids came this weekend. Obviously, I've got 6 children and I live with 2. And so when the other 4 came this weekend, I don't have much time to think about myself. So,
And
yeah.
lots of fun and laughter and joking around and pissing about and outdoor time.
They, you know, the kids just force me back to being myself. They force me back to where I need to be. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Wicked.
What about you? How are you?
Yeah, I'm riding this out, you know, like, you know, yeah. I'm trying to stay focused on work with existing clients, as I've sort of talked about before. Also trying to think about what's next. And so we're doing some stuff around that, which it's exciting, you know, it's exciting in the sense that, you know, we're just trying to do things differently. It isn't exciting being in the situation that we're in right now. And I think what I'm really starting to really appreciate over the last couple of weeks is the gift that is being around loved ones so much. Is just like we're forming new bonds, you know, like, and that are going to last a long time, that may not have been as strong, you know. So with my kids, I'm talking about my kids basically, and, you know, and just being there every day and being with each other every day, that's wicked. Yeah. So I'm excited about today as well. You know, this is number 3. And I'm really enjoying, you know, it in a way, it's a different kind of a conversation that we have. Would be lying if we didn't say, you know, that it was completely normal. We're talking into microphones and, you know, and recording and all that stuff. But it's actually, I think, you know, it's elevating certain aspects of the conversation. And I'm enjoying some of the nice feedback that we're getting from people, you know, who are listening to it.
I think I do want to unpack actually a little bit, probably what instigated me coming back to myself in the last couple of weeks. You kind of know about this. I did a post on one of my social media. It was on Facebook. I did a slightly petulant post about Boris Johnson, right? Anybody that knows me well knows that when I get a little bit political, I'll be the first to tell you I start leaning too far left and I become over, you know, overly left, and I get too far and I stop listening and I become a little bit petulant. So I did a post, and this was before Boris Johnson went to hospital. And actually, I'll tell you what the post said. The post said, "Have you heard about the guy who bragged about shaking hands with corona patients in a hospital and then caught the virus himself and passed it on to loads of people that he worked with and his pregnant wife? You wouldn't have seen him for a while. He's been in isolation." That's what it said. Now, it was before he went into hospital. It was petulant, but the point I was trying to make was it was actually born out of, I was seeing loads and loads of posts where people were saying, stay at home, and like taking pictures of people in fields and stuff like that. And I got a little bit, I got antsy about it, right? And I was like, we shouldn't be pointing at each other when our leader's doing this. Now, anyway, the idea around it's neither here nor there. But what happened is maybe for the first time since I've, been visible in the way that I am and becoming visible, I got quite a bit of backlash. Now, I'm used to people kind of digging me out in a not very nice way, because I do get some private messages from people that want to that kind of call me out and get really argumentative with me. But this was very sort of public. It was on the thread, and what I think hurt me, and it did hurt me, I'm happy to say it hurt me, were the comments like, "I'm surprised at you. I thought you were different." And one or two people started to question my ability to do the charity work that I do. And someone actually made a formal complaint to one of the charities. Now, I did what I normally do, which is acted like I don't care and like, it doesn't matter. But the reality is that I felt a lot of anxiety around it for 2 or 3 days. And I had to start to question, where is that? Why is that? Why am I feeling that? And what I did realize is that my natural instinct when people tell me things about me that they don't like is to want to change those things about me so that I can get them to like me again. And we had a couple of conversations about it. And what, eventually the big learning that I took from it is that I can't talk about authenticity and being who you really are like I do in the way that I do, and be liked by everyone. I want to be myself. I want to be my whole self, kind of warts and all. Yeah, everything that comes with being me. I want to be all of those things. And I have to start to realize that if I want to do that and be true to myself, then I can't be liked by everyone. And that has helped me to change my path a little bit. It's been a big learning in the last couple of weeks. And it's, I realize now that I can't seek validation from everyone. For a long time, I think I wanted to be somebody to everyone. And I think you can't be that and be true to yourself. But that was a grapple for me, and it was a painful learning, but I have learned from it. I've learned big from it, and I feel so much more free now as a result.
I think, the nature of what you do versus what I do is you put yourself out more to a wider audience, and your audience, ranges from people who have been through a journey around addiction, maybe in addiction, have recovering through to kind of people that are in the workspace and fellow professionals and all those sorts of things. And everyone sort of has an opinion, but when you put something out that is potentially polarizing, if it's politics, if it's calling out a member of the royal family, or if it's calling out a member of parliament or the prime minister in this case, it's gonna bring out people. And then the nature of society that we're in now, you've also got people who actively jump into the social sphere to make points. I saw the post, we've talked about it. It's not just about how people react to it. You were trying to project and you were trying to broadcast something, and we talked about at the time, I think, it's not and or, so what Boris did was wrong, and the kind of the way that he was going around the UK shaking hands and a laissez-faire kind of approach to the whole thing, not turning up to Cobra meetings and all that sort of stuff, has impacted us. And there'll be people who will believe that that's complete bollocks, and that that's not true. And then there'll be other people that can recognize that there is a lot of truth to the fact that we are, really struggling with, with the impact of having a laissez-faire approach. So there's that, and people shouldn't be going out, and congregating in parks. So it's not like, don't just, you should be focusing on what Boris has done. Actually, both situations are bad, both in this case. And I don't think they're not comparable in my view. They're just part of the same ecosystem of people should be doing things differently. People should be respecting what, the situation we're in.
Yeah. But it did teach me that, when you put yourself out in a certain way across social media, now the way that I use social media, I don't actually use it in the wider way in which it's used, which is to like, here's what I'm doing, here's what I'm out and about doing this. Actually, when you really look at my social media, it's all based around kind of the work that I do, right? So I do share a lot of myself with my audience, right?
Yeah.
But there's a lot of myself that I realize doesn't get shared. And what I could realize is that this was a post on Facebook, right? And so my Facebook audience see me in a completely different light to my Twitter audience, for example, because on Twitter, I post stuff like that all of the time. So it wouldn't be a surprise there. And so people create an image of who you are, and they, people feel like they know you. And then when you do something like me, right? So if I'd have said that to you on the phone, we would have ended up probably laughing about it and joking about it, because you'd have took the mickey out of me you'd have said, oh, he's got his left hat on again. Do you know what I mean? Or something like that. But because people don't know me, so they don't know the context of it, it really awakened me to that understanding that, that people will create an image of you based on what they know. And it's definitely helped me to realize that going forward, I want to show more of myself, so that people can get a much more fuller idea of who I am. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I'm glad, that you've taken some stuff away from it. And it's definitely, I've definitely felt a shift in you over the last couple of weeks. What do you think is the wider societal learning then that taking what you've learned as an individual, what's the reflection for society around kind of, what's the bigger lesson?
Yeah. So I do have a reflection and a lesson that I believe from that. Social media, particularly social media, will always create the idea that you have a bigger community, or that you can create a bigger community than you actually have. The trap, and it's a trap that I clearly got caught up in, is the belief that however many people you have within that community, so I'm talking followers, friends, connections, depending on whatever social thing you're on, right? Is the belief that all of that, the whole of it, is your community, right? It's important to stay true to yourself. And if you stay true to yourself, that community will become smaller, because being true to yourself will mean that some people won't like you. But you are much better to have a smaller, more prosperous community that is buying into you and likes you for your whole self, than you are for trying to build a much larger community. That means that you have to wear certain masks and be a certain way in order to be liked. Now, the reason I fall into that category of doing that so easily is because the environment in which, I grew up as a young boy, desperate to be loved, right? I grew up, my initial years in the environment that I lived in was an environment where I felt like I had to be something in order to be part of my family. Yeah. So I had to push down and bury certain emotions in order to be loved. So I grew up to become somebody who's kind of conditioned to do that, to push down and bury my emotions and be who you want me to be so that you can like me. and I want to, and I'm moving towards, and part of my healing journey is to become much more authentic to myself. And this is who I am. You can like me or you can not like me, but this is who I am. When I do that, my community is the people around me. Like I've said, it will be smaller, but they will be real. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, no,
And
of course it
I
makes
do
sense.
think that's the way to learn. And I think it's easy to fall into that trap, not just on social media, but in general.
Mm.
And I think lots of us do fall into
Yeah,
it.
I want to pick up on something you said, when you first started chatting about this. You said your tendency is, when you learn about things that people don't like, your tendency is to want to fix those things, right? And that's sort of a fixing weakness kind of approach. And the reason I picked up on that is, a lot of, as you know, a lot of the kind of the framing for our work and our philosophy is positive psychology. We use the strengths-based approach, and the whole notion of strengths for us is to really focus on the things that energize you, right? And to lean into the world with those. And through that, you start to look at the things that are kind of non-strengths or drainers. We use a brilliant tool called Strength Scope as the kind of the base of what we do. And that really, I think hones in on helping people to understand, yeah, this is the stuff that really fires me up, alerts me, gets me excited. And so most of what you're doing in the world is you living through your strengths. And it's just when some of that stuff comes in, you start to realize that something's being drained, your energy's being drained around that situation, whatever it is. Part of it will be the impact that you think might be happening as a result of the conversation happening, the lack of control. All that stuff is kind of de-energized. So always try and lean in with the things that energize you to address the things that you are, that are draining you in that situation. So in that moment, what you did was you sort of caught it, and then you stepped back and you reflected. And so one of the things that energizes you that I know is meditation, it's mindfulness, it's mindful practice. And actually you caught it, you used some of that, so the thing that energized you, and then you came back and you looked at it with a different perspective. And I think that's really, like, in this moment when you're sort of caught up, you're overwhelmed, it's really intense, the level of kind of social media activity, the kind of the constant kind of news cycle around, like, how bad things are. So one of the ways you can do is, if you catch it, is to kind of go back and positively retreat, I should say, because sometimes retreat feels a bit like a negative word, but positively retreat into your strengths, into the things that energize you, and then come back at it with a fresh perspective.
Yeah, and that's so true. And actually, do you know what? I think the reason why this probably hit me harder than it normally would is because when I'm out there in the normal world doing my thing and living the life that I normally live, that post would have happened, then I would have been out delivering or whatever it was, floating about doing my work, and I would have gained some perspective, and I would have gone away from that, and I would have come back to it at the end of the day, and I probably wouldn't have even engaged or started like trying to defend myself, because I'd have been in my strengths all day, and it would have given me some perspective. And I think in the current environment that we live in, as in being in lockdown, I didn't have that opportunity, right? There was no opportunity there for me to escape it and to kind of ground myself in my strengths and in what works for me. So I think that it consumed my mind. When it happened, it consumed my mind, and I spent the rest of the day it was there in my head, and I couldn't get away from it. So I think you're right. I think that's what happened.
Wicked.
But it's good. It's like, in those moments, that's where the learnings come. Yeah. It's through discomfort that I learn. There's no doubt about that. I hone my skills when I'm in no struggle, but when I go into the struggle, I always come up with a big learning. And I think that's the positive from it. Right.
Brilliant. And how are you feeling generally about the world at the moment?
Like I don't struggle too much with this, right? My life is not too drastically different from what it would be when we're not in lockdown. I'm quite introverted. I like staying in and all that stuff anyway. And I can't wait to get back out there. Like that, I massively cannot wait to get back out there. But it hasn't had a hugely draining and negative impact on me in the way that I know it might for some people. But I definitely, I miss my close family. I miss, being able to, we go over our in-laws a lot, and spend a lot of time there. And I do miss that. I'm missing football a lot. I'm missing the release that I get from football, from playing it, from watching it, from talking about it, the banter and everything that comes with that. So I'm missing all of that. And I am, I have started checking the news in a, is the end coming kind of a way. How are you doing with it? How do you feel about it all?
I'm all right, as I keep saying. I think I think I'm trying not to get caught up in all the speculation. Is this a short V curve, V return back to prosperity? Is it a longer U curve back to prosperity? Are we through the peak zone of it? So you've got to be careful not to get pulled into it. And it's much easier for me than it is for other people, because I'm a trained coach and I can sort of sometimes coach myself. And then I've got brilliant people around me like you or Chris or, John, my business partners, and obviously partners and family and stuff like that. But one of the things that I try and reflect on is actually your cousin Mark. We were having a conversation once about kind of the highs and lows of being an entrepreneur, right? So the highs and lows, right? So you can have like an amazing high, like with your first client that, gives you your first big bit of income. You think, yeah, I'm on it. And then suddenly another one drops away. And then you sort of, you lurch, or you can't ship your product. You can't get stuff out. And then you suddenly do. And it's up and down. And the key thing is to not move with those highs and lows, right? Constantly, because otherwise your body, your system, your energy can't kind of normalize. And the key thing is to like just go as much as you can. And we're all human, so this, it's unrealistic to think you can do this the whole time, but to go like travel through it constantly. So don't get too pulled by the highs, don't get too pulled by the lows, and just kind of keep on your journey. And I've been trying to sort of adopt that sort of similar framework. I guess I'm more worried about the health impact around what we don't know, right? So I haven't lost anyone close to me, but I know that there have been lots of people that have lost people close to them, and that's when it might become really real, so I'm very conscious of that. I can live here in my bubble and be with family and stuff like that and take the positives from it, but I haven't had an impact like that, and that's kind of in the back of my mind.
Yeah, do you know what? It's an important thing to mention as well, because as much as I say that it's not affected me in a massively negative way, I have to really, really be aware of the fact that I've got a garden, a nice garden, right? And the weather's been quite nice with that. I live in an area where I can walk to and be quite immersed in nature very, very quickly. If I lived in a flat, for example, with no garden and my two kids, I don't know if I would be I think I would be in quite a bad place. And I do, when I see people sat out on the field and that, when people get angry and you say you should be staying in and stuff, I do get a little bit like, if you live in a flat, you can sit in the field for as long as you want, in my eyes, genuinely. And it's a shame. And I know there's a massive discussion to be had about how you could ever live in a world like that. But it's a shame where we couldn't just say, you know what, if you live in a flat and you haven't got a garden, you can sit in the park and sit in the field. Because if only the people that didn't have a garden did it, they could do it safely with the social distancing that's needed, right? But it wouldn't happen. Because if you said that was the rules, everyone would go sit in the field and say that I live in a flat, right? But I do think it's a shame that we can't do that. And I do get a little bit like, when I see the pictures of people sat in the fields and everyone's like, go home, you losers. When you see the posts and like stuff like that, I do get a little bit like, You don't know their story sat on that field. You don't know if that man sat on the bench over there, for example, he could be married to somebody who is a key worker, right? Who's at the moment working 12 hours a day. They live in a flat with one child or two children, and he gets 1 hour exercise a day, and he's used it to go and walk and sit on the bench just to regain his, yeah. Or the woman sat in the field could be the key worker who lives in a flat. And I don't think we think enough about that. We're too quick to just be like, stay at home, I'm doing it. Which actually is quite a nice segue and leads quite on to something I wanted to talk about. And I want to spend a little bit of time talking about Captain Tom Moore. Do you know who Captain Tom Moore is, Has?
Yeah.
Yeah. He's 99 years old, hero, absolute hero in the eyes of society and what he's done. I think he's raised somewhere like 23, 24 million pounds for the NHS, walking in his back garden, and he has to use a walking aid in order to do that. And I think it shows a special human being that he's been able to do this. But and I don't think anyone can deny that, right? People are talking about a knighthood. I wouldn't begrudge him a knighthood, right? He is an absolute hero. But the thing that I did want to explore a little bit around it is there was a post floating about on social media comparing him to Sam Smith, the music artist. Sam Smith had a picture taken. I've seen an article last night, by the way, where he's now saying that he was joking when he had this picture taken. But originally, it was a picture of him sat on the step of his mansion, crying, and there's this big thing of like, this is the difference between the two generations, right? They've got Captain Tom Moore, the hero, doing what he's doing, and then this kind of celebrity figure crying on the front doorstep, right? Why do you think that comparison, why do you think firstly that comparison comes up?
Why does it come up? I think it comes up because, honestly, because there are people that will always want to create division. There are people that enjoy, appreciate, benefit from creating division.
Yeah.
They're actually two isolated situations. There is
Completely
nothing
isolated.
that connects them. There is nothing that connects them whatsoever. And in some ways, the people that kind of have generated activity are taking away from the incredible epic feat by saying, well, this is brilliant, but, this is what society is doing. Also, there's this whole thing of, the generations that came before the millennials or Generation Z knew what hardship was. And, the thing is, this wonderful gentleman did not ask to be pulled into this conversation.
No.
He's like, I'm doing this. And then the world got behind it. Look, I would say one thing. It obviously generated some activity, but these are keyboard warriors, okay, who sit around and make negative comments. The vast majority who've been talking about this, this incredible feat and the knighthood and stuff, haven't connected it. I think we take it with a pinch of salt. Like,
we do take it with a pinch of salt, but do you think it does open that wider conversation of? I do think there's a large part of society. I don't know whether you could call it a majority, but I would think it would be closer to. I don't think it's a minority of society that believe in the snowflake generation, that believe that there's a lot of people who are too overly sensitive. For example, I think there's still a big part of society that would say, if you've got a lot of money, then you have absolutely no reason whatsoever to struggle with your emotional health or your mental health in any way. I think there's a big part of society that does believe that. Now, there's a flip side of this. Now, I did a post about that post, right? And basically the idea around my post, was to just say, look, you're doing a disservice to this hero, by the way, to make this comparison. But also, if we're going to start judging on whose difficult emotions are valid, then we're going to start causing huge problems. Yeah. If we start saying, actually, this person or that person or any given person who says they're struggling does not have a reason to struggle, that's what keeps people silent. Yeah. And that's what starts to cause problems. And we see all this sort of be kind and open up and talk about the ways that you're feeling. And then when somebody in a position like Sam Smith does it, we're quick to shut them down and say, you haven't got any reason to feel like that. Now, there's a flip side of this. When I done the post, a few people wrote the sentence, and these are good people, nice, well-meaning people, right? So this is not about calling them out, but some people said to me, mental health does not discriminate, right? And I disagree with that. I don't know what your thoughts. Do you think that mental health discriminates?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Do you want me to elaborate?
Yeah, I do want you to elaborate.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think, there are perspectives. There's probably evidence that can point to people that come from lower income backgrounds, from certain ethnic communities, social kind of divides, are more likely to be impacted by mental health because of the stuff that they have to go through. So I don't think, I do think it is discriminatory in that sense.
Yeah, so it does discriminate. And you can come from the most wealthy of backgrounds, live in a big mansion, and still suffer just as bad as anyone else, right? So the reality, as always, or as nearly as always, happens somewhere in the gray area between, right? And people find it tricky to have that conversation. Ricky Gervais, I love Ricky Gervais's comedy, right? The Office, I'm a super fan of. But he's come out and saying anybody, any celebrity, anybody that's rich that lives in a mansion should shut up at the moment, right? Because they don't know how hard things are. And I understand his sentiment in that, but I also don't make him right. I also don't think that's true necessarily. But I do think there's a conversation to be had about how they probably need to be careful, because it would be easy to be sat in a flat and look at somebody in a mansion saying that it's difficult and become resentful towards them. Do you know what I mean?
I think it's a case of using empathy and compassion. Like if you use empathy and compassion, then you understand. Empathy is being able to see the other person's perspective. So actually, you may be going through struggles and you may be living in a mansion, but understanding what those other people are going through, it just helps you temper and adjust your tone accordingly. And I think some celebrities are just nailing it, are doing it brilliantly, and others just didn't get it. So, but I think, who knows? Everyone's trying to stay focused. Everyone's trying to stay positive. Everyone is trying to kind of deliver some sort of positivity or optimism in the best way that they believe they can.
Yeah.
It's just a bit tone deaf sometimes. So when
some of it hasn't landed, has it?
Gal
Did you see
Gadot did the whole, got all the celebrities to sing Imagine, I
Imagine.
think, and it was horrible.
Such a poor choice of song as well.
Oh, it's terrible.
It's like a load of rich celebrities singing Imagine There's No Heaven or whatever. Yeah, the lyrics of Imagine sort of was kind of, I mean, they got it so wrong.
It was just a bit naff, wasn't it? It was just a bit naff, and it got panned. And then you've got like John Krasinski. It was in our newsletter, and he's doing the good news thing, and he's taken it upon himself to take just a really lighthearted kind of bring a really lighthearted like news show, and it's fun, it's joyous, and and I really appreciate that. And without that, that's kind of we don't have those moments of joy and entertainment that aren't pre-recorded and it's live. So I think it's the right balance, and I think they're getting the tone right. I think Jimmy Fallon kind of doing his shows from his like tree house and stuff like that, that's pretty cool as well, so yeah, maybe we went off topic there a little bit.
By the way, I do also feel a bit sorry for the people that done the Imagine song. Because I don't think that look, they're not horrible people. They thought this was
I didn't say that though, mate. I said
no. I know you didn't. I know you didn't. I'm just. It's easy to sort of polarize the conversation because you did watch it and think, "What are you doing?"
Yeah, but I think it's tone deaf.
Yeah, he's
like
tone deaf.
a
Yeah.
lot of the singer was tone deaf as well, to be honest. But it was just, I think they just thought that they would try and lift the people. I get it, but that you don't need to be hearing, because it was quite early on, and everyone's kind of a bit worried. You don't need to hear celebrities singing Imagine. Like, what's that going to do? Anyway, it is. Look, I imagine that there you go, play on words. The intentions were right, but I don't know, it didn't work. But other things are working, so that's good. So I want to ask you a question.
Go on, shoot.
What makes you happy?
So let me give you my inner workings of my head when you ask me that question, right? Rather than just try and give you an answer. You ask me the question, and then the voice in my head starts to go, you need to give something very spiritual, deep, and meaningful here, right? So my natural instinct is to want to give you a really, really good answer to that question. But what makes me feel happy? If happiness is a state of mind where I feel kind of free and in the moment, that's what I would describe as happiness as being. I think it's when I've got enough about me to be present in the moment with my family. Which, by the way, doesn't come as easily to me as I would like it. I'm being honest with you there. But when I'm with my kids and I'm lost in the moment, that's when I'm happy, without question.
So don't make it so nebulous. Tell me a moment recently where you were like happy.
A moment recently when I was happy was when my 4 kids came. So I've got my 2 youngest kids live with me, and then my 4 kids come on the weekend. My 4 kids hadn't come on their weekend the last weekend before because of everything that was going on. The government regulations say that they can move between 2 parents' houses. And so they came this weekend. They came, and when they were all around the table, right, I have to eat my dinner at the side because I can't fit around the table. But when all my kids are around the table, and it's just chaos and everyone's talking, that's when I'm happy, because that's all I ever wanted in my life, ever. Forget everything else, right? And I chase a lot of stuff, and I've got lots of ambitions and hopes and all of that stuff. But when I was a kid, all I wanted was to be somebody, right? And to be a dad, and to have an environment where my kids feel safe. I failed miserably at that originally, and I still have the ability to fail at that now. But them moments when that happens, that's what makes me happy. Nothing makes me as happy as that.
Wicked.
What about you?
Lots of things, man.
Mate, you come up with a question, so you should have a stock answer.
Of course
here.
I do. Of course I do.
Good.
Of course I do. Yeah. No, I'm saying lots of things make me happy. Being with my family, being with mates, getting down to the sea, all those sorts of things. But the thing that really gives me a lot of joy is cooking and feeding.
Yeah.
So just cooking for me to eat, there's a certain level of joy I get, right? But cooking, the whole process of it, thinking about it, like the meal I'm going to make, and kind of the process of it, I really enjoy cooking. And then feeding is the most like that's the most enjoyable part for me. So I know I've taken a fairly light view on this, right? But I was just thinking, Sunday, doing a barbecue or whatever, and just getting ready, and getting over the grill and cooking, and then eating together and stuff like that. That's just it's one of my simple pleasures in life that
You've never fed
really
me.
enjoy.
You've never fed me.
I've
been to Brighton. I've been to your hometown loads of times. You've never fed me.
Chris
You've not even bought me some stuff in Tupperware.
Chris, who I've known for like 10 years, probably. He gives me grief.
Have you never fed
him? It. I have. He keeps forgetting it, but I have. I made him
a
roast chicken.
What have I got to do in order for you to feed me?
What you have to do, I think you got to put the hard yards in, mate. I've only known you 2 years. You got to do another 8 years. No. Next time, no. Seriously, when this is all said and done, and you can come to Brighton, I'll cook for you.
Yeah. In fairness, you've lost a lot of bets with me and had to buy me breakfast, so that kind of counts. That would, by the way, while we're here, another thing that would make me happy is just before all this happened, Liverpool were about to win the league, and if
you'd be happy if they won the league. That's really kind of.
If the season got cancelled, right, and Liverpool didn't get to win the league, that would make me more happy than when my kids are sat on the table.
Now that you've said that, you're going to be waiting 20 years for me to cook you a meal. I'm just going to not even let you in my house ever again. Now, I'd love to have a session where we talk about football, and I appreciate that it will be boring for a lot of people, so we'll have to kind of make it a bit more interesting for the non-football fans. But
yeah, we will. But there's lots of stuff that we can cover actually in the way that football. Yeah. You know, there's a mental health and well-being aspect always with me as well. So,
I got another question, mate.
Yeah, go on.
You don't like it when I put you on the spot, do you?
No, I like it, mate. I like the game.
I was going to ask you what's your proudest achievement, but I scratched that because I sort of think that it doesn't have to be an achievement. So what's your proudest moment?
My proudest moment.
So far.
You know what? It would be something child-based, right? To do with my children, right? And I know this is similar to the happiness one, but like when I was younger, yeah, I always like when people wanted to be firemen, policemen, or whatever, doctors when we were at school, right? I just wanted to be a dad and not be a drunk, right? And by the time I was 18, 19 years old, I was a dad and I was a drunk, right? So I think for me, my proudest moment is probably to have turned all that around. Now, can I pinpoint in my life the moment when I could safely say I turned it all around? Probably not. But the very act of knowing that if you asked me, I couldn't be a better dad than what I am now. That's different to me saying I'm the best dad in the world. I couldn't be a better dad than what I am now. Actually, no, because when I was 18, 19 years old, stuck in the place that I was, I probably couldn't have been a better dad than what I was then. So to be able to show up as a dad as the man that I want to be is my proudest achievement. And that might seem a small feat to a lot of people, but to be the man who is emotionally, financially, and everything else available for my children in the way that I am has to be my proudest moment. And with that, like buying this house and marrying my wife as well, that, you know, I guess those were moments when I kind of cemented something that I'd always longed for and wanted. So yeah, they for me, they would have to be, that would be my proudest achievement. Good answer, right? Good family man answer. Yeah.
Love it.
What have you got for me, Has?
Actually, I don't. This is like, I don't have a single proud moment that I can point to. Like, you know, we're both family men, right? So the three top proudest moments are when I became a dad to each of my kids, right? That goes without saying. There's nothing more important. You know me, people that know me, people that, you know me now, or, you know, have a part of my network, know how important my family is. So there's that.
Of the three children, let me just ask you, of the three children, knowing them all now, which one was the proudest moment?
I couldn't possibly say. No,
equal, I know. Man. I saw in your eyes the name come into your head.
Yeah.
And then
no, equal. And they're like amazing human beings, right? So that makes me proud. Work-wise, I've had loads of proud moments, you know. I think moving away from corporate life into doing this and still being at it 5 years, that's something I'm proud of. Setting up different businesses, making a partnership with Chris and John really work. We're in a really great space. We've got someone else that's going to be joining us, soon. And when I can share more about that, I will. Just I think I'm really proud of the connections I make in the world. Sitting here talking to you, I'm proud of the fact that we're doing this podcast. So I don't, maybe it's sitting on the fence a little bit. There's no one proudest moment, and maybe if we come back in a year's time, I might have something that we've done or I've done that I can really point to. But I think the point is, it's always important to, as a society, even as humans, maybe we tend to point to the things that aren't working, right? And we try and fix those. And actually, sometimes it's good to just reflect and say, this is what we're proud of. I got one more question.
Good. I like this.
All right, one more question before we go into our little final segment. Who or what inspires you?
So this is just going to sound really, I want to use the word wanky, because I'm inspired by my kids, man. And I know I've given the same answer every time, and I sound like I'm just trying to be a certain kind of person. But the answer I always give with who am I inspired by is my kids. My kid, and I'm talking all of them, right down to the 2-year-old. Yeah, I'm inspired by my 4 kids from my previous marriage, tenacity and ability to still be kind and loving in a world that wasn't so kind and loving to them in their initial years. And I'm inspired by my youngest 2 girls. I'm inspired by their ability to be exactly who they are, their freedom of their ability to, my 3-year-old daughter's, like her mum, in sort of very strong-willed, very happy to say no, doesn't care what I think when she says no, which makes her harder to parent, but love her all the same for that. So definitely my 6 children. But to give you a slightly different answer as well, Gabor Mate is like my big inspiration for my work, the way that he talks. Yeah. So I guess his learnings and his work around compassion and stuff like that inspires me.
Why did you do that, by the way? Sorry, I'm going to interrupt. You didn't need to add in Gabor. Like, we can talk about him another time. Like, your kids.
Yeah, I just didn't want to. I didn't want to.
But you did. Listen, you made the choice, and it's brilliant.
Yeah,
and I love it, and it's great.
All right,
you don't need to validate it with the next bit.
The next bit, yeah. Okay, agreed. So, what about you?
Very current, very obvious. But frontline people, I'm going to say, frontline people right now are inspiring me massively. And I'm not just calling out, medical staff, right? They are obviously at the forefront, and they're throwing themselves into it, and that is incredibly inspirational, and they deserve the round of applause every Thursday at 8 p.m. And I'm proud to kind of do that. But just everyone that's showing up, like going into the supermarket, and people there working. It's like, for a lot of people, that's not a vocation, right? For a lot of people, it is. And it's no disrespect what I'm saying here, right? It's not for a lot of people, it's not the purpose that that's driving them. So to kind of keep doing it, putting themselves out, coming to work, because they've got families, they've got themselves, their health to worry about, and I think that's like inspirational for us to kind of keep doing our bit right now, but also as a kind of optimism, as you talked about, last time, for hope for the future, the light, right? Which is that deep down, when it counts, people are stepping up, and I think that's amazing. So yeah, that's what's inspiring me, and I know it's very topical and stuff, and but I think that I will take that beyond whatever period we're in. I think there's just something to take from that,
and I hope the nation does. I hope we do that as people. I hope we really do realize, I think there will be a shift and change in perception of that. A special mention, from my perspective, for teachers as well, that in the way that they've pivoted. You know, I say, how have they been able to deal with a crisis with limited resources so well? And that's because teachers' jobs are basically dealing with crisis with limited resources. That's what they do for a living. When you go into the schools and you realize the complex set of needs that every individual comes with. So yeah, all of them from the binman to everybody that's still working, like you say, when you go in the shops as well. So yes, it's a good one, Has.
Nice.
And very topical, which is good because we're a topical show. Which, by the way, while we're there talking about a topical show, I just want to let the listeners know that we now have an Instagram account.
We do.
115 miles pod. I think we've got 13 followers at the moment.
Mate, we are flying.
Absolutely flying. Actually, it's worth while we're here as well. You set up the account, didn't you?
Yeah.
The account has is following 3 people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think when you open the account, it asks you who you want to follow, right?
Right.
So you're following me, my account, which is
right.
good. There's 2 others, Nike and The Rock. Can you just talk us through? Can you just talk us through your thinking process behind? You know what? I'm going to follow Josh because he's one of the hosts, and I'm going to follow Nike and The Rock.
Well,
because you could have followed none. You could have just followed me.
Yeah.
So what made you think, no, actually, 115 miles pod at 115 miles pod ought to be following Nike and The Rock as well?
Well, you know, I love cooking, and The Rock's phrases, you know what's cooking.
It's actually if you smell what The Rock is cooking.
I don't know. You know, I actually don't know. I like Dwayne Johnson. I think he's cool. And I quite like Nike. No, honestly, I wish I had a better answer. But I thought you had to follow someone. They were the first 2 that showed up. So I just went click, click. And then obviously I had to follow the social media god that is Josh Connolly to get going. So
I think on another episode, it's worth unpacking your love for
The
Dwayne
Rock.
Johnson. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm happy to do it. I'm a sensitive male. I can talk about, you know, my emotions. It's all good.
Yeah, good. Good.
All right. Reasons to be cheerful.
Yes.
So, you know, as a reminder from our last episode, we want to end our podcast with a brief chat on things that we're seeing in the world that give us reasons to be cheerful.
Yeah. And you went first last week, so I'll go first this week, shall I?
All right. Nice.
So mine's a very personal one this week. And
family?
Eh?
The family?
No, it's exactly the same. It ties in with everything that I've said.
Go on.
Last week was National Announcement Day for primary schools. And my daughter, Maya, starts primary school in September. And we got the school that we wanted for first choice. We went and visited these 3 different primary schools. And the one that sort of had a bit of a focus on sport, and we liked the kind of general feng shui of the school, we got given that school. So that was a really proud moment. Proud that we've got, you know, we're happy that we got the right school. And, you know, our little Maya's going to school. That's it now, you know, that's like a big, big step. And the one thing that I do hope, kind of on the flip side of it, I really hope she gets to, because we started putting her into preschool a couple of days a week just to get her ready. I hope the next time she goes back to school, she gets to go to preschool for even just a week before we just throw her straight into the other school. But no, it was a happy moment. My wife cried. Like, my wife cries at every kind of moment like that we've had with the children, you know, when they potty train and go through all that. But yeah, so that is my reason to be cheerful. Yeah, and it just reminds you that, you know, there's an end to all of this, and things will go back to normal, and our children will go back to school and all that stuff. Yeah. So yeah, that's mine.
Okay, well, connected in a way, actually, around children is this thing that sort of really struck me as I was reflecting over the last sort of week or so was I saw that there are people in India, so over 125 miles away from the Himalayan mountain range, are now seeing it for the first time. For some, it's, you know, for the first time in their lives, but, you know, for the last 30 years, it's been covered in pollution. Wow. And so to kind of suddenly, you know, wake up and say, oh my God, look at that vista. That's awesome. So why have I made that segue? for our children, right? And what I'm taking from this, in whilst we are trying to navigate this as humans, the reason I'm cheerful is that nature seems to be breathing again, right? Nature seems like, if you think that it was probably very suffocated, nature was suffocated with all the pollution, it seems breathing again, and it's sort of correcting itself at a fairly quick pace. And obviously there are long-term kind of repercussions around the damage to the environment, right? But what the reason to be cheerful is, it's taking the moment and go, I'm going to pop these mountain ranges back into view. I'm going to get dolphins to swim in the Venice canals. I'm going to get goats to run around a Welsh farm and pick up their food. I think it's pretty awesome. And so that's my reason to be cheerful.
What a way to finish, Has. What a way to finish. I love the reasons to be cheerful thing. I think it's a really good way to end. So we've done it, mate. Free. Anything else you want to add to the episode before we sign out?
No, I'm looking forward to the next one. I wish everyone well. And we'll see them next time.
Yeah, and I'll sign out by saying, like everyone's saying at the moment, stay safe, people.